The rain fell in sheets over the cracked concrete of what was once downtown San Francisco. Dr. Thomas Reed stood at the window of the makeshift conference room, watching water pool in the sunken streets below. Behind him, the heated argument continued. "It's impossible," said the man from the European coalition. "We need to focus on Earth recovery, not fantasy projects." Thomas turned from the window. At 45, his once dark hair was streaked with gray, his face lined from years of fighting both nature and bureaucracy. He looked at the holographic display in the center of the room, his design for what many were already calling a fool's dream. "The Ark isn't a fantasy," Thomas said quietly. "It's our insurance policy." Around the table sat representatives from the 12 remaining functional governments. Climate disasters had redrawn Earth's maps over the past 30 years. Coastlines were gone. Farmlands had turned to desert. Billions had died. "Dr. Reed," said the representative from New Asia, "your numbers don't add up. No one has ever built a ship this size, let alone one meant to travel between stars." Before Thomas could answer, the door opened. Anna Miller walked in, her practical uniform bearing the simple patch of the United Science Authority. At 50, Anna commanded respect without asking for it. Her eyes scanned the room quickly. "I see we're having the same conversation as last week," she said, setting down her tablet. Meanwhile, the global food reserves just dropped below the 15-year mark. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Earth was dying faster than they could heal it. "The Ark project needs funding now," Anna continued. "Not debates, not committees. Dr. Reed's design is our best chance." "Based on unproven theories," shouted the representative from the Americas Alliance. "We can't waste resources on." The door banged open again. A tall man with wild eyes and a wrinkled shirt stumbled in, security guards trying to hold him back. "Let him go," Thomas said, recognizing the newcomer. "That's Jack Foster." The guards released Jack, who rushed to the display and began typing frantically. "Who is this person?" demanded the European representative. Anna stepped forward. "Dr. Jack Foster, former head of the Quantum Propulsion Lab before it was defunded." Jack finished typing and stepped back. A new set of equations appeared over the holographic display of the Ark. "It works," Jack said simply. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in days. "I solved it last night." Thomas moved closer to the display, his eyes widening as he reviewed the math. "This is," he began. "The engine," Jack finished for him. "A working design for the quantum fold drive. We can build it with existing materials." The room erupted in voices. Thomas ignored them, checking Jack's calculations. After 5 minutes, he looked up. "He's right," Thomas announced. "The drive is theoretically sound." "Theoretically," scoffed the new Asian representative. "We need more than theories." Anna stepped into the center of the room, her voice cutting through the noise. "What we need is to survive. Earth has maybe 20 years left of habitability in the best regions. The Ark gives us a chance to preserve humanity beyond that." "Even if this drive works," said the African Union representative, more thoughtful than the others, "the cost would be astronomical. None of our governments can afford it." Anna smiled for the first time. "That's why we don't ask just governments." She pulled up a new display showing a global funding plan. "We ask everyone. Small nations, corporations, private citizens, everyone contributes what they can." "The public will never support this," said the European. "Let's find out," Thomas replied. 3 weeks later, Thomas stood on a hastily built stage in what remained of Golden Gate Park. Behind him, a massive screen showed the Ark design. Before him, thousands of people stood in the rain, while billions more watched on screens worldwide. "They say we can't build it," Thomas began, his voice carrying across the crowd. "They say it's too expensive, too complicated, too theoretical. They say we should accept our fate here on a dying Earth." The crowd was silent, faces grim under ponchos and umbrellas. "But humanity doesn't accept fate," Thomas continued. We've never just laid down and died. We fight. We build. We survive. He gestured to the screen where the ark rotated slowly, a massive cylinder with rings that would eventually generate artificial gravity. This ship will carry 50,000 people to a new home. It will preserve our knowledge, our cultures, our hopes. But I won't lie to you, building it will be the hardest thing humans have ever done. Anna stepped forward next. We need miners in the asteroid belt, engineers on Earth, farmers to develop sustainable growth systems. We need everyone. The crowd stirred. Someone called out, "How do we know it will work?" Jack stepped up then, his wild appearance somewhat tamed for the occasion. "Because the math works," he said simply. "I spent 10 years on the engine design. I've tested components. I know it works." From the crowd, someone shouted, "Who gets to go?" Anna took that question. Those who build it, those who have skills we'll need for a new world, and a selection by lottery. No one gets on just because they're rich or powerful. A murmur ran through the crowd, growing louder until it became a cheer. Thomas raised his hands. "We start today. Not with government approval, but with your help. Every dollar, every hour of work, every idea matters." 1 year later, Thomas stood in the lunar observation room, watching as the first framework of the ark took shape in orbit. Beside him, Anna reviewed supply manifests while Jack tinkered with a model of his engine. The European coalition announced they're starting their own project. Anna said, not looking up from her tablet. "They're calling it the Practical Earth Recovery Plan." Thomas nodded. "And the new Asians? Still saying we'll fail," Jack commented. "The physics journals won't even publish my papers anymore." "It doesn't matter," Thomas said, watching as space-suited figures assembled the massive ring that would form the ark's backbone. "We have 20,000 volunteers working worldwide now. The asteroid mining operation just sent their first shipment of rare metals." Anna finally looked up. "We're behind schedule and over budget." "When are we?" Thomas smiled slightly. "But we're building it. Despite everything, we're actually building it." Outside, Earth hung in the black, beautiful and wounded. The first piece of humanity's future took shape, one bolt at a time, built by people who refused to give up. Jack set down his model and joined Thomas at the window. "They still doubt us," he said. Thomas nodded. "Let them. We'll build it anyway." 5 years had passed since the first metal beams of the ark were joined in Earth's orbit. What had once been just a dream on paper now hung in space like a giant, incomplete skeleton. Thomas floated through the central corridor, his boots magnetically clipping to the floor every few steps to keep him from drifting away. Around him, workers in gray jumpsuits welded panels and ran cables. The ship was taking shape, but too slowly. "Dr. Reed," called a voice. Thomas turned to see Mike, the head of construction, pushing himself through the air toward him. The man's face was tight with worry. "What is it now?" Thomas asked, already knowing it wouldn't be good news. "The shipment from the moon base didn't arrive," Mike said, keeping his voice low. "Third time this month." Thomas sighed. "New Asia again." Mike nodded. "They've blocked our access to their launch sites. Say we're taking resources they need for their Earth recovery plan." This was nothing new. For 5 years, the ARK project had faced one obstacle after another. The major powers hadn't openly attacked the project, but they found countless ways to slow it down. "We'll use the backup supply line through Africa," Thomas decided. "It will cost more, but—" A loud alarm cut him off. Red lights flashed throughout the corridor. "Hull breach in Ring Section 4, announced the automated system. Thomas and Mike looked at each other for just a moment before pushing off toward the emergency. Workers rushed past them, heading for safety zones. Thomas moved against the flow, following the red emergency lights. When they reached Section 4, Thomas saw the damage immediately. A 2-meter hole had opened in the outer hull. Emergency shields had activated, creating a shimmer of energy that kept the air from escaping, but they wouldn't last long. What happened? Thomas demanded, looking at the worker in charge of this section. I don't know, the woman replied, checking her tablet. The panel was installed last week. It passed all tests. Thomas moved closer to examine the hole. The edges weren't jagged from impact. They were smooth. This wasn't an accident. Sabotage, he whispered to Mike, who had followed him. Get Anna on the comm. Now. Anna Miller sat in her office on the moon base, facing a screen filled with angry government representatives. The ARC project has gone too far, said the woman from the European coalition. You're draining global resources during Earth's greatest crisis. The crisis is exactly why we need the ARC. Anna replied calmly, though her fingers gripped her chair arms tightly. Earth is running out of time. Then help us fix Earth instead of abandoning it, demanded the new Asian representative. Anna took a deep breath. We're not abandoning. Her private comm buzzed urgently. She glanced down to see Mike's name flashing. Anna rarely interrupted diplomatic calls, but something in the urgency code made her pause. Excuse me for one moment, she said to the screen, then muted the call. Mike's face appeared on her second screen. We've had sabotage on the ARC Section 4. Thomas is there now. Anna's stomach tightened. Casualties? None yet, but the emergency shields won't hold much longer. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Anna said, already standing up. She unmuted the diplomatic call. I apologize, but I have an emergency that requires my immediate attention, more important than Earth's future, asked the Americas Alliance representative sarcastically. Anna looked directly into the camera. This is Earth's future, whether you help us or not. She cut the connection and hurried toward the launch bay. Jack Foster had been in his workshop for 3 days straight, trying to solve the engine calibration problem. Cups of cold coffee surrounded him. His workbench was covered with parts from the prototype quantum fold drive. He barely noticed when his door slid open, and Thomas walked in. We almost lost Section 4 today, Thomas said without greeting. Jack looked up, his red-rimmed eyes focusing slowly. Sabotage. Thomas nodded. How did you know? Because they're getting desperate, Jack said, picking up a small metal cube from his workbench. This arrived yesterday. It's a job offer from New Asia. They want me to head their new propulsion research center. And leave the ARC? Thomas asked. Jack tossed the cube aside. They think I care about money or fancy labs. He gestured to the prototype engine. All I care about is making this work. Thomas moved closer to examine the engine parts. And will it work? For the first time, doubt crossed Jack's face. The math is right, but scaling it up. He ran a hand through his unwashed hair. Every test shows energy fluctuations that could tear the ship apart. We need more time, Thomas said. Jack laughed bitterly. Time is the one thing we don't have. 1 month later, Thomas, Anna, and Jack stood in the ARC's newly completed command center. Large windows looked out at Earth below and the vastness of space above. Construction crews report the damage to Section 4 is fully repaired, Anna said, reviewing her tablet. But we're now 6 months behind schedule. And that's not our only problem, Jack added grimly. He brought up a holographic display of the engine system. The last test showed fractures in the containment field. If we can't solve it, the engine will never safely power a ship this size. Thomas stared out at the blue-green Earth. From here, you couldn't see the devastation, the expanding deserts, the flooded coastlines. It looked perfect and whole. We're not giving up, he said firmly. The next supply ship is bringing the materials you need for a redesign, Jack. And Anna's new funding campaign just hit its target. Anna looked up from her tablet, surprised. How did you know that? I just got the confirmation. Thomas smiled slightly. Because people believe in us now. Not the governments, but ordinary people. They're selling what little they have to fund this ship. A young worker entered the command center. Dr. Reed, the new crew rotation has arrived from Earth. They're waiting for your welcome speech. Thomas nodded. Tell them I'll be there shortly. After the worker left, Thomas turned to his friends. 5 years ago, everyone said this was impossible. Now look. He gestured around the command center, then to the half-built ship beyond. We're making the impossible happen, piece by piece. Jack's comm beeped with an alert. He checked it, then looked up with the first genuine smile in months. The new materials for the engine redesign just arrived. Early. See. Thomas said, against all odds, we're still building it. Anna joined them at the window, watching as a small supply ship docked with the Ark. They still doubt us, she said softly. Thomas put a hand on her shoulder. Then we'll keep proving them wrong. Outside, Earth continued its slow spin, beautiful and broken. Above it, humanity's greatest hope took shape, built by those who refused to surrender to despair. 3 years later, the Ark hung in Earth's orbit like a gleaming metal city. Its massive ring structure was complete, and the central habitat cylinder was now sealed. From a distance, it looked finished. But Thomas knew better. He stood in what would become the main farm area, a vast open space that ran the length of the habitat ring. Above him, powerful lights simulated sunlight. Around him, empty metal beds waited for soil. It looks bigger without the plants, Anna said, walking up beside him. 8 years of working on the Ark had added more gray to her hair, but her eyes remained sharp and determined. Still hard to believe we got this far, Thomas replied. He touched one of the empty plant beds. Now comes the hard part. Anna raised an eyebrow. Harder than building the largest structure humans have ever created in space. Much harder, Thomas said. Now we have to make it live. The Ark's physical structure was nearly complete, but an empty shell couldn't sustain human life for the decades it would take to reach another star system. They needed functioning ecosystems, reliable food production, and sustainable water cycling. All things that had been tested on a small scale, but never in a closed system this large. The first soil shipment arrives tomorrow, Anna said. The botanists are ready to begin planting test crops. Thomas nodded. And Jack's team. Anna's expression tightened, still working on the radiation problem. That was the current crisis. Jack's quantum fold engine worked. The smaller tests had proven that. But it produced unexpected radiation patterns that could penetrate the habitat section. If they couldn't solve it, the ship would reach its destination with no living crew. He'll figure it out, Thomas said with more confidence than he felt. He always does. Anna pulled up a holographic display from her wrist unit. We have another problem. The selection committee is deadlocked again. Thomas sighed. This was the issue that kept him awake at night. The Ark could hold 10,000 people, a tiny fraction of Earth's remaining population. Who deserved to go? Who would stay behind on a dying planet? What's the disagreement this time? He asked. The usual. The Americans want more seats for their citizens. The Africans say their genetic diversity is more important for humanity's future. The Europeans argue their technical experts should have priority. Thomas looked out across the empty farm. And what do you think? Anna was silent for a moment. I think we need to stop thinking in terms of nations. We're not saving Americans or Europeans or Africans. We're saving humans. Jack Foster hadn't slept in 3 days. His workshop, once cluttered but organized, now looked like a disaster zone. Equipment was disassembled. Calculations covered every surface. His team had long since given up and gone to rest. But Jack couldn't stop. The radiation problem was solvable. It had to be. He studied the latest test results again. The quantum fold engine created a bubble of altered spacetime around the ship, allowing it to move vast distances by folding space itself. But the process generated exotic particles that normal shielding couldn't block. Think, he muttered to himself. There has to be a way. His door slid open, and Thomas walked in with 2 cups of coffee. You look terrible, Thomas said, handing Jack one of the cups. Jack took it without looking up. Thanks for the update. Thomas sat down across from him. The habitat section is ready for planting. Anna's finalizing the crew selection parameters. We're making progress. Not if everyone dies of radiation poisoning, Jack said bitterly. He pushed a tablet toward Thomas. Latest simulations. Even with triple shielding, the radiation breaks through after 6 months. Thomas studied the results. What if we didn't try to block it? What if we redirected it instead? Jack looked up, his bloodshot eyes suddenly alert. What do you mean? The radiation follows the quantum field lines, right? Thomas drew a quick diagram. So what if we add a secondary fold system here, just to redirect the field lines away from the habitat? Jack stared at the diagram, his mind racing. That might work. We'd need to reconfigure the entire drive system. But he started sketching rapidly on a new tablet. Yes, this could work. For the first time in weeks, Thomas saw genuine hope on his friend's face. Anna stood before the global committee, 50 representatives from Earth's remaining nations. The meeting was virtual. Few people traveled anymore with fuel so scarce. But the hostility came through clearly on the screens. The ARC project has gone too far, said the representative from Eurasia. You've built your ship with resources that could have helped millions still suffering on Earth. And now you plan to take our best and brightest away, added the European spokeswoman, leaving the rest of us behind. Anna took a deep breath. The ARC was always meant as humanity's insurance policy, not an escape for the privileged. That's why our selection process. About that selection process, interrupted the Americas Alliance representative. We've received a proposal from a coalition of the world's remaining governments. The ARC should be placed under international control. Each nation would receive a quota of seats proportional to their contribution to global recovery efforts. Anna understood immediately what this meant. The wealthy and powerful would claim all the spots, leaving behind those who had actually built the ARC. That wasn't the deal, she said firmly. The ARC belongs to humanity, not to governments. Our selection process considers skills, genetic diversity, and cultural knowledge. We also reserve 30% of seats for those who built it. The deal has changed, said the new Asian representative coldly. A united fleet from our remaining naval forces is being assembled. The ARC will be placed under proper control within 1 month. The screens went dark one by one, leaving Anna alone in the conference room. She immediately opened a secure channel to Thomas. They're coming for the ARC, she said without preamble. 1 month. Thomas stood in the observation dome of the ARC, looking down at Earth. Behind him, Anna and Jack waited silently. We always knew this might happen, Thomas said finally. The powerful have never willingly shared with the desperate. We're not ready, Jack said. The engine modifications need at least 2 more months. And even then, we'd be testing them for the first time on a full-scale jump. And the ecosystems haven't been proven yet, Anna added. We've barely started the planting. Nothing is growing well enough to sustain life. Thomas turned to face his friends. Then we have 1 month to do 3 months of work. He looked at each of them. Can it be done? Jack ran a hand through his wild hair. If we work around the clock, if we cut every possible corner, maybe. The crew selection, Thomas asked Anna. I'll finalize it tonight, she promised. But we'll only have space for 8,000 instead of 10. We'll need the extra room for more stored supplies since the farms won't be ready. Thomas looked back at Earth, beautiful and broken, the home they were preparing to leave. 8 years ago, they said we couldn't build the ARC at all, he said quietly. They've doubted us at every step. Let them doubt us one more time. Jack stood straighter, a new resolve in his exhausted face. 1 month. We'll make it work. Anna nodded. I'll start the crew notifications tonight. Quietly. Thomas put his hands on his friend's shoulders. We built this when the world said it was impossible. Now we'll make it fly, whether they want us to or not. The countdown stood at 3 days. Throughout the ARC, people worked with desperate energy. Sleep was a luxury no one could afford. Thomas moved through the crowded corridors, checking systems, and encouraging workers. The ship hummed with activity. Engineers finalizing life support, farmers planting seedlings in half-prepared soil, medical teams setting up equipment. Thomas. A voice called from behind. He turned to see Maria, the head botanist, hurrying toward him. Her face was drawn from lack of sleep. "The algae tanks are online," she reported. "Oxygen production is at 60% of needed levels. Not ideal, but we'll survive." Thomas nodded. "Good enough. What about food production?" Maria's expression tightened. "We'll need to rely heavily on stored supplies for the first 6 months. The farms need time we don't have." This was the story everywhere on the Ark. Systems that should have had months more testing and preparation were being rushed into operation. It wasn't ideal, but they had no choice. "We'll make it work," Thomas said, his standard reply these days. He checked his wrist display. "I need to get to command. The final transport ships are arriving." As he made his way to the command center, Thomas passed families moving into their quarters, children carrying small bags of precious belongings, parents trying to look confident despite the fear in their eyes. These were the lucky ones, the chosen 8,000 who would leave Earth behind. In the command center, Anna stood before a wall of screens, her face grim. "Status?" Thomas asked. "Not good," she replied. "The military coalition has moved their timeline up. Their fleet launches in 24 hours. Thomas felt his stomach drop. "But we're not ready. We need at least 3 more days." "We don't have 3 days," Anna said simply. On the main screen, a map showed the positions of military vessels around the world, all preparing to launch. After years of fighting the Ark project, the world's powers had decided to take it for themselves. "What about the crew?" Thomas asked. 6,000 on board so far," Anna replied. "The final 2,000 are in transit on the last shuttles." Thomas moved to another screen showing the engine room, where Jack and his team were making final adjustments to the quantum fold drive. "Jack," Thomas called. "We need to move up the launch. 24 hours. Jack looked up, his face streaked with grease and exhaustion. 24? That's not possible. We haven't finished the radiation shielding modifications. Can we jump without them?" Jack ran a hand through his hair. "Yes, but I'd need to reroute power from the habitation ring during the jump. It would mean no life support in half the living quarters for about 12 hours. "Do it," Thomas ordered. "Anna, tell everyone to gather in the central sections during the jump." "There's another problem," Jack added, his voice dropping. "The fold calculations aren't complete. I can get us away from Earth, but I can't guarantee we'll end up exactly where we planned." Thomas and Anna exchanged glances. The target was a star system 15 light-years away, carefully chosen for its potential to harbor habitable worlds. "How close can you get us?" Anna asked. "Within a light-year, maybe 2, Jack admitted. "We'd need to make a second jump after recalculating." "One problem at a time," Thomas said. "Get us away from Earth first. We'll worry about the destination later." 12 hours later, Thomas stood at the window in his quarters, looking down at Earth one last time. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown land, still beautiful despite humanity's harm. He wondered if he would ever see it again. His door chimed, and Anna entered without waiting for permission. Her face was flushed with urgency. "The military coalition has launched early," she reported. "First vessels will reach us in 10 hours. Thomas turned from the window. "How many crew on board?" 7,200, Anna replied. "The final transport ships won't make it in time." The weight of this settled on Thomas's shoulders. 800 people, people who had worked on the Ark, who had earned their places, would be left behind. "We need to decide now," Anna said quietly. "Wait for everyone and risk losing everything, or launch with who we have." Before Thomas could answer, his comm beeped urgently. Jack's face appeared on the screen. "Thomas, we've got a problem," he said, his voice tight with stress. "The coalition ships aren't just coming to take control. They're coming to stop us completely." "What do you mean?" Thomas demanded. "I just intercepted communications between their vessels," Jack explained. "They're carrying nuclear warheads. If they can't seize the Ark, they plan to destroy it." Thomas felt the blood drain from his face. "Are you certain?" "Completely," Jack replied. "They're afraid of what happens if we succeed, that Earth will be abandoned by anyone with the means to leave." Anna stepped closer to the screen. "How long until they're in range?" 8 hours, maybe less," Jack said. "We need to launch now, Thomas. Right now." Thomas closed his eyes briefly. 800 people left behind against 8,000 lost if they waited. There was only one choice. "Initiate launch sequence," he ordered. "Anna, get everyone to the central sections for the jump." "Jack, how long do you need to prepare the engine?" "Give me 1 hour," Jack said. "No more." "You have it," Thomas replied. "Anna, make the announcement." As Anna left to inform the crew, Thomas took one final look at Earth. "I'm sorry," he whispered to those they would leave behind. Throughout the Ark, alarms sounded as Anna's voice came over the speakers. "All personnel to central sections immediately. Prepare for emergency launch. This is not a drill." People hurried through corridors, carrying children and vital equipment. Medical teams moved patients on stretchers. In the farm sections, botanists secured young plants against the upcoming power loss. In the engine room, Jack worked frantically on the final adjustments to the quantum fold drive. His hands moved with precision despite his exhaustion, making changes that would determine whether they lived or died. 30 minutes to launch, said the automated system. On the approaching military vessels, commanders pushed their engines to maximum, racing to stop what they saw as humanity's abandonment. 20 minutes to launch. In command, Thomas and Anna watched as the last departments reported ready status. The central sections were crowded but secure. Life support was functioning at minimal levels. 10 minutes to launch. Jack made his way to the engine control room, his work on the fold drive complete. It wasn't perfect, but it would get them away. 5 minutes to launch. Thomas took his place in the captain's chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations, faces tense but determined. "Final launch sequence initiated," reported the systems officer. Thomas opened a channel to the entire ship. "This is Dr. Thomas Reed. In 1 minute, we will make the first quantum fold jump in human history. We leave behind our home, but we carry humanity's future with us. The world doubted we could build this ship. They doubted we could make it fly. Today, we prove them wrong again." "Engine charging," Jack reported from the engine control room. "Ready on your mark." Thomas looked at Anna, who nodded once. "Mark," Thomas said clearly. The Ark shuddered as the quantum fold drive engaged. Outside, space itself seemed to bend and fold around the massive ship. In a flash of impossible light, the greatest achievement of human engineering vanished from Earth orbit, leaving behind only darkness and disbelieving military commanders. Humanity had taken its first step to the stars. Ready or not. 6 months after the jump, the Ark drifted through the emptiness between stars. Inside, a new society took shape day by day. Thomas stood in the now thriving farm section, surrounded by green plants and the soft sounds of water flowing through irrigation channels. What had been empty metal beds were now rows of crops. Wheat, corn, vegetables of all kinds. The air smelled of life and growth. "The latest harvest was better than expected," Maria said, walking alongside him. The botanist looked healthier than she had in years, her face relaxed despite the hard work. "We'll be fully self-sufficient in another 3 months." Thomas nodded, pleased. "And the oxygen levels?" 98% of optimal," Maria replied with pride. "The algae tanks are working perfectly now." This was the story across the Ark. Systems that had been rushed into service were now stabilized. The ship that had fled Earth half complete was becoming the home they had always imagined. Not that it had been easy. The first month after the jump had been the hardest. Half the systems had failed. Food had been strictly rationed. The water recyclers had broken down twice. But the people of the Ark had pulled together, working day and night to fix what was broken. Thomas's comm unit beeped. "Dr. Reed to command, please." He said goodbye to Maria and made his way through the corridors. Unlike the early days, these passages were now decorated with artwork and plants. Children played in designated areas. People greeted each other by name. It was becoming a community, not just a ship. In command, Anna and Jack waited for him. Jack looked thinner than before, his face pale despite the improved conditions aboard the ship. "What's happening?" Thomas asked. Anna gestured to the main screen. "We've received a transmission from Earth." Thomas felt his heart skip. In the 6 months since their departure, there had been no contact with the home they left behind. "Play it," he said. The screen flickered, then showed a familiar face, the head of the African Union, one of the few world leaders who had quietly supported the Ark project. "Dr. Reed, if you receive this, please know that Earth continues," the man said. His face looked tired, but there was a strength in his eyes. "The military coalition that tried to stop you has fallen. In the aftermath of your departure, something unexpected happened. The nations of Earth have begun to truly work together." Thomas, Anna, and Jack exchanged glances of surprise. "Your success showed us what humanity could achieve when united by a common purpose," the message continued. "We are applying those lessons now to save our planet. The recovery projects are showing results. The oceans are slowly healing. We've stabilized the atmosphere deterioration." The man paused, his expression solemn. "We do not ask you to return. Your journey must continue. But we request an exchange of knowledge. Share with us what you learn among the stars, and we will share what we discover in healing the Earth." The message ended, leaving the command center in silence. "How is this possible?" Anna finally asked. "They were ready to destroy us 6 months ago." Jack moved to a console, checking the transmission data. "The message is genuine. It traveled for nearly 6 months to reach us." He looked up, his face showing the first real hope in a long time. "They've changed, just as we have." Thomas stared at the blank screen, thinking. Call a council meeting. The people should decide how we respond. The council chamber was crowded with representatives from every section of the Ark. Farmers sat beside engineers. Medical staff next to maintenance workers. All had equal voices in the ship's governance, a system Anna had designed during the long months of travel. Thomas stood before them, explaining the message from Earth and the choice they now faced. "We have 2 options," he concluded. "Continue to our original destination without looking back, or establish this communication link with Earth and share knowledge." A woman stood up. "Lisa, the head of medical. What about returning? Some of us left family behind." Murmurs filled the room. Many had left loved ones, believing they would never see them again. Thomas looked to Jack, who shook his head slightly. "The quantum fold drive can't reverse our course easily," Thomas explained. "We're nearly a light year from Earth, and even if we could return, the ship wasn't designed to land. We would be starting over again." Another person stood, Ben from engineering. "If Earth is healing, maybe they don't need our help anymore. Maybe we should just focus on our new home." "Or maybe," Anna said, stepping forward, "this is exactly what the Ark was meant to be, not just an escape ship, but a bridge between Earth and the stars." Discussion continued for hours, passionate but respectful. Thomas listened as people shared their hopes, fears, and dreams for both their own future and Earth's. Finally, they voted. The decision was clear. Establish the communication link, share knowledge in both directions, but continue the journey to their new home. 1 month later, Thomas sat in his quarters, recording a message. Behind him, visible through the viewport, distant stars shone like tiny beacons. "This is the first of our knowledge transmissions," he began. We're sending the improvements we've made to the life support systems, which may help with atmospheric processing on Earth. We're also sharing the genetic modifications our botanists have developed for crops to grow in limited light conditions." He paused, looking at a small plant on his desk, a new variety developed on the Ark, able to grow with minimal resources. "More important than the technical knowledge is what we've learned about ourselves," Thomas continued, "about building a society where everyone contributes and everyone matters, about making hard choices for the greater good, about believing in the impossible until it becomes possible." He thought about the journey so far, and the longer one still ahead. The Ark was on course for their target star system, still years away. Jack had corrected their course after the emergency jump, though the effort had weakened him. The radiation exposure during the engine modifications had taken a toll that the medical team couldn't fully reverse. "Earth doubted us when we started building the Ark," Thomas said. "They said it couldn't be done, but we built it anyway. And now, both on Earth and here among the stars, humanity continues. Different paths, but the same spirit." He ended the recording and sent it back across the light years to the planet they had left behind. As the message traveled through space, Thomas looked out at the stars. Somewhere ahead was their new home. Somewhere behind, the old one healed. "They doubted us," he whispered to himself, a small smile forming on his tired face. "But we built it anyway." In the corridors outside, children who had never seen Earth played. In the farms, plants never meant to leave their home planet thrived. In the workshops, engineers designed new tools for a world they hadn't yet seen. The Ark flew on, carrying humanity's past and future together into the deep unknown. The sky above Houston turned purple at exactly noon. No clouds, no storm warning, just a sudden shift from blue to deep violet that made everyone stop and look up. Captain James Reed was in the middle of his morning jog when it happened. He stopped, breathing hard, and squinted at the strange color spreading across the sky. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. Reed pulled it out and saw 27 messages, all marked urgent. The top one was from Space Command. "WREPORTIMNEDIAHELY. First contact, co-environment." By the time Reed arrived at the command center, the news was everywhere. A massive ship, unlike anything humans had built, hovered silently above Earth's atmosphere. It had appeared without warning, without any approach detected on radar or deep space monitoring. "It's just sitting there," General Brooks said, pointing at the main screen. The ship looked like a dark star with 7 points, each extending miles into space. No radio contact, no signals of any kind. Reed stared at the image. After 20 years in space exploration, he had always believed this day would come. He just hadn't expected it in his lifetime. "Why am I here?" Reed asked. Brooks handed him a tablet. "Because 10 minutes ago, they asked for you by name." Reed looked down at the screen. A simple message in perfect English. "Captain James Reed of ECS Defiant. We who you speak with you." 3 hours later, Reed was suited up and boarding a shuttle to the International Space Station. From there, he would transfer to his own ship, the Defiant, which was being prepped for an unprecedented meeting in Earth orbit. "This is insane," Dr. Anna Miller said as she checked Reed's suit connections. As the Defiant's chief engineer, she had been pulled from her sister's wedding to join the mission. "We don't know who they are, what they want, or why they asked for you specifically." "That makes 2 of us," Reed said, trying to sound calmer than he felt. The Defiant was Earth's newest spacecraft, designed for long-duration missions to Mars. It wasn't built for first contact, but it was the best humanity had. As Reed settled into the captain's chair, he looked at his hastily assembled crew. Miller, his trusted engineer, Dr. Luis Ortega, the xenobiologist who had written theoretical papers about alien life, and 5 others chosen for their expertise and cool heads. Approaching designated coordinates, the pilot announced. Through the view screen, Reed could see the alien ship. It was even more impressive up close. A perfect seven-pointed star made of a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible engines, no windows, nothing that suggested how it moved or who might be inside. "They're sending a transmission," Communications Officer Park said. The view screen shifted, and Reed found himself looking at a being unlike anything he had imagined. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its skin shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes, at least, Reed assumed they were eyes, were vertical slits that glowed with an inner light. "I am Nexus, voice of the Voidwalkers," it said in perfect English with no hint of an accent. "We have observed your species for 417 of your years. Today marks your formal introduction to the galactic community." Reed took a deep breath. "We are honored to make your acquaintance. I'm Captain James Reed, representing Earth." The being made a gesture that might have been a nod. "We know who you are, James Reed. Your species stands at a crossroads. 57 civilizations currently participate in our federation. Each earned their place through demonstration of worthiness." "And how does a species demonstrate worthiness?" Reed asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Through challenge." The alien's colors darkened. "Humans must complete a task that will test your limits. Success brings membership and protection. Failure means quarantine for 100 years. Miller whispered from behind Reed. "I don't like where this is going." Reed kept his face neutral. "What is this challenge?" "Create a stable wormhole bridge capable of transporting matter between Earth and your moon. You have 5 of your Earth years to complete this task." The crew exchanged glances. Creating a stable wormhole was theoretical at best. No human had ever come close to making one work in a lab, let alone at planetary scale. "That's impossible," Miller blurted out. "The energy requirements alone mold." "Other species completed this task," Nexus interrupted. "The fastest took 52 years. Most required over a century." Its colors shifted to a deep blue. "If humans succeed in 5 years, it will be unprecedented." Reed leaned forward. "And if we refuse the challenge?" "Then quarantine begins immediately. No space travel beyond your orbit for 100 years. No further contact with other civilizations." The implications were clear. Humanity's expansion to Mars, the outer planets, and beyond would be halted. A century of isolation while the rest of the galaxy moved forward without them. "We need time to discuss this," Reed said carefully. "You have 24 hours to accept the challenge. We will provide basic theoretical frameworks to begin your work. The test is not merely of intelligence, but of determination." The alien's colors brightened. "Many believe your species will fail. They have placed significant wagers on this outcome." After the transmission ended, the crew sat in shocked silence. "They're testing us," Ortega said finally, "like lab rats." Miller was already reviewing the theoretical data the aliens had transmitted. "This is beyond advanced physics. It's like giving Stone Age humans the blueprints for a nuclear reactor." "Can it be done?" Reed asked her directly. Miller ran her hands through her short hair. "In 5 years? No, it's impossible." Reed stood up and looked at each crew member. "I need to know right now if any of you want to refuse this challenge and doom humanity to a century of house arrest." Park asked, "What choice do we have?" Reed turned to the view screen, staring at the alien ship that had changed everything in a single day. "They've been watching us for over 400 years. They chose this moment for a reason. They chose us for a reason. So we're doing this?" Miller asked. Reed nodded slowly. "They called it impossible. But humans have a long history of turning impossible into reality." Within days, the news had spread worldwide. Initial panic gave way to determination as governments set aside conflicts to focus on the impossible project, as people were calling it. The greatest scientific minds on Earth were being gathered. Unlimited funding was approved by a United Nations. 1 month after first contact, Reed stood in a newly constructed facility in Geneva, watching thousands of engineers and scientists at work. The Voidwalkers had provided a small observation team that watched silently from a designated area. "They're enjoying this," Miller said, now appointed as chief scientist of the project. "They know we can't do it." Reed looked at the alien observers, their colors shifting in patterns he couldn't interpret. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe they'll be the first to learn what happens when you challenge humanity to do the impossible." Miller smiled for the first time since the project began. "I almost feel sorry for them." 1 year passed since the Voidwalkers issued their challenge. The once empty space above Earth now held Nexus Station, a massive ring that housed 5,000 of humanity's brightest minds. From orbit, it looked like a silver halo surrounding the planet. Dr. Anna Miller hadn't slept properly in months. Dark circles under her eyes had become her most recognizable feature as she moved through the crowded main lab of Nexus. The latest simulation failed again, she told Captain Reed as they walked past rows of engineers working at holographic displays. "The energy requirement is still too high. We'd need 10 nuclear plants just to power a wormhole the size of a penny." Reed had changed too. His military posture remained, but worry lines had deepened on his face. 4 years left," he said quietly. "We need a breakthrough." 3 Voidwalkers floated silently in their observation bubble on the far side of the lab. Their skin colors shifted between dark purple and deep blue, a pattern Miller had come to recognize as amusement. "They're enjoying watching us fail," she muttered. "Then let's disappoint them," Reed replied. That afternoon, Reed called an all-hands meeting in the station's main hall. 5,000 scientists and engineers packed the space, exhaustion visible on every face. "I know we're stuck," Reed began without preamble. "The alien theories are advanced, but they're not working for us. So I've made a decision. We're bringing in someone new." Murmurs spread through the crowd. The team had been carefully selected from the best minds on Earth. "His name is Robert Davis," Reed continued. "He's not a physicist or an engineer. He's an inventor from a small town in Ohio. His ideas about matter transportation caught my attention." Miller frowned. "The garage scientist, the one who claims he made a new element." "Reed, we don't have time for thinking differently." Reed raised an eyebrow. "That's exactly what we need." 2 days later, Robert Davis arrived at Nexus Station. He wasn't what anyone expected. Middle-aged with wild gray hair and wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt, he looked completely out of place among the uniformed scientists. "So this is the impossible problem," Davis said, studying the holographic models in the main lab. He walked in circles around the display, scratching his beard. "You're all overthinking it." Miller crossed her arms. "We have the best minds on the planet working on this." "That's the problem," Davis said, tapping the hologram. "You're all trying to build a bridge the way the aliens told you to build it. Has anyone asked why we need to use their method?" From the back of the room, a young physicist named Tom Wilson spoke up. "The aliens provided the theoretical framework. It's thousands of years ahead of our science." Davis shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just their way of doing things." He pulled a small metal cube from his pocket and placed it on the table. "This is my element. I call it Davium." Miller picked up the cube. It felt strangely light, almost as if it might float away from her fingers. "What does it do?" "It doesn't fit into our periodic table," Davis said. "And it seems to exist slightly out of phase with normal matter. I made it by accident when I was trying to create a new battery type." Wilson took the cube next, his eyes widening. "This shouldn't be possible." "That's what people keep telling me," Davis said with a grin. Over the next few weeks, Wilson and Davis became an unlikely team. Wilson with his precise mathematical mind, and Davis with his unconventional approach, worked day and night on a new theory. "The aliens create wormholes by bending space until it punctures," Wilson explained during a progress meeting. "But Davis's element suggests another approach. Instead of bending space, We can slide between the folds that already exist. Reed looked at the complicated equations on the screen. Can you explain that in simple terms? Davis stepped forward. Imagine space as a piece of paper. The aliens fold the paper until it touches itself, then punch a hole through both layers. We're saying we can slit between the layers without folding or punching. Using your mystery element. Miller asked skeptically. Exactly, Wilson answered. It exists partly in normal space, and partly somewhere else. We think it's naturally attuned to the spaces between realities. 3 months later, they were ready for the first small-scale test. A sealed chamber had been constructed in the most isolated section of Nexus Station. Inside, a ring of davium surrounded a complex machine that hummed with power. If this works, Miller said as they monitored from a safe distance, we should see a microscopic wormhole form between these 2 points. She pointed at 2 spots inside the chamber separated by 3 meters. Reed noticed more voidwalkers had gathered in their observation area. Word of the test must have spread. Power at 70%. Wilson called out. 80. 90. Full power. The davium ring began to glow with an inner light. The air between the 2 target points shimmered like a heat mirage. Something's happening, Davis whispered. A tiny point of darkness appeared, smaller than a grain of sand. As they watched, it expanded to the size of a marble. It's working, Wilson shouted. The instruments showed a stable connection between the 2 points. Then, without warning, the dark spot pulsed. Alarms blared as energy readings spiked off the charts. Shut it down, Miller yelled, but it was too late. A flash of light filled the chamber, followed by a shockwave that rocked the entire station. When the emergency systems cleared the smoke, the test machine was a melted ruin. The davium ring had vanished completely. Is everyone okay? Reed asked, helping Wilson up from the floor. The wormhole collapsed, Wilson said, staring at the destruction. But it worked, Captain. For 3 seconds, we had a stable wormhole. Later, Reed found Miller in her office, reviewing the test data. 3 seconds isn't going to impress the Voidwalkers, she said without looking up. But it's proof the concept works, Reed replied. Davis's approach might be the answer. The door slid open, and Nexus, the Voidwalker representative, entered. Its skin pulsed with rapid color changes. Your test produced unexpected results, it said. No species has attempted wormhole creation using your method. Reed stood straighter. Is that a problem? It is. Interesting, Nexus replied. The other observers have increased their wagers against your success. The odds now stand at 10,000 to 1. After the alien left, Miller turned to Reed. They still think we'll fail. Reed smiled. Good. The higher the odds, the bigger our victory will be. If we win, Miller reminded him. When we win, Reed corrected. Get Davis and Wilson. Tell them we're scaling up. I want a wormhole big enough to put my hand through within 6 months. As Reed left the lab, he glanced at the Voidwalker observation area. For the first time, the aliens weren't showing colors of amusement. Instead, they pulsed with a new pattern, one he hadn't seen before. It looked almost like concern. 3 years had passed since the Voidwalkers issued their impossible challenge. 2 years remained. On Nexus Station, the mood had shifted from desperate determination to cautious hope. In the main testing chamber, now rebuilt and expanded, a ring of davium 10 meters wide dominated the room. The strange element, once just a small cube in Davis's pocket, had been carefully grown in specialized labs throughout Earth. It had cost billions to produce this much, but no price seemed too high with humanity's future at stake. Today's the day, Tom Wilson said, making final adjustments to the control panel. His once neat appearance had given way to the same disheveled look that Davis had always sported. If this works, we'll create a wormhole large enough to send a probe through. Captain Reed watched from the observation deck, along with Miller Davis and 20 other project leaders. In another section, a larger group of Voidwalkers than usual had gathered to watch. Reed had learned to read some of their color patterns. They were displaying shades that indicated intense interest. Beginning power-up sequence, Wilson called through the comm system. 20%. 40%. Reed felt his heart pounding. If this test succeeded, they would be on track to complete the challenge with months to spare. 60%. 80%. 100% power. The Davium ring began to glow with the now familiar inner light. In the center of the ring, space itself seemed to ripple, then darken. A perfect circle of absolute blackness formed, growing until it reached 2 meters in diameter. Wormhole stabilized. Wilson shouted, his voice filled with excitement. Sending through the probe now. A small drone the size of a basketball moved forward on a mechanical arm, approaching the dark circle. As its front edge touched the blackness, instruments throughout the station began recording massive amounts of data. The probe is transmitting, Miller said, watching the incoming data stream. It's seeing the receiving chamber on the other side. The drone was halfway through the wormhole when the first alarm sounded. Energy fluctuation, Wilson reported, his voice suddenly tense. The field is becoming unstable. Reed leaned forward. Pull the probe back. Shut it down. I'm trying, Wilson said, his fingers flying over the controls. The wormhole is resisting collapse. Power levels are still climbing. The Davium ring's glow intensified from soft blue to blinding white. The wormhole itself began to pulse, expanding and contracting rapidly. Everyone out, Reed ordered, hitting the station-wide alarm. Emergency evacuation of all non-essential personnel. Miller turned to him. Tom can't leave the controls. If that wormhole collapses violently. A high-pitched whine cut through the air, and the observation window suddenly cracked. Reed caught a glimpse of Wilson's panicked face just before a blinding flash filled the chamber. The explosion rocked the entire station, knocking people off their feet. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, containing the blast to the testing section. Sirens wailed as the station's automated systems fought to maintain life support. Hours later, in the emergency command center, Reed received the final casualty report. 7 dead, including Tom Wilson, 15 more seriously injured. The testing chamber was completely destroyed, along with nearly all their Davium supplies. What happened? Reed asked Miller, who had been analyzing the data since the accident. She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. The wormhole became self-sustaining. It kept drawing energy from somewhere else, another dimension, maybe. Wilson tried to shut it down, but she trailed off, too exhausted to continue. Davis sat in the corner, staring at nothing. It's my fault, he said quietly. My element. My idea. The door to the command center slid open, and Nexus entered. The Voidwalker's skin displayed a pattern Reed had never seen before, ripples of deep gray and black. You have suffered a significant setback, Nexus stated. Many of my kind believe this demonstrates the wisdom of our testing protocol. Your species attempts to advance too quickly. Reed stood, facing the alien. We lost good people today. Indeed, this is why most species take decades to create stable wormholes. The dangers are substantial. Nexus's colors shifted slightly. The Galactic Council suggests you accept defeat to prevent further loss of life. Your quarantine would be reduced to 50 years as a gesture of goodwill. Before Reed could respond, a message came through on the main communication screen. It was the United Nations Secretary General. Captain Reed, she said, her face grave. In light of today's tragedy, the Security Council has voted to suspend the impossible project pending a full safety review. We cannot justify further loss of life. Reed felt the room spinning around him. Madam Secretary, we can't quit now. We're making progress. 7 people died today, Captain, she interrupted. Public opinion has shifted. People are scared. Several governments have already withdrawn their funding and scientific teams. After the call ended, silence filled the command center. Miller finally spoke. Maybe they're right. Maybe we should stop. Reed walked to the window overlooking Earth. From up here, it looked peaceful, unaware that its future was being decided in this room. Davis, he said without turning around, you once told me that failure is just information about what doesn't work. What does this failure tell us? Davis looked up, a small spark returning to his eyes. That we were close. Too close. The wormhole became unstable because it was touching something it shouldn't have. Reed turned to face the others. I want to review all the data from today's test. Every reading, every measurement. What are you looking for? Miller asked. Evidence, Reed said, because I don't think this was just a scientific miscalculation. Later that night, Reed, Miller, and Davis sat in Reed's private quarters, reviewing the test records frame by frame. Look, Reed said, pointing to a specific moment in the recording. Right there, milliseconds before the instability begins. Miller leaned in. That's an energy spike coming from outside the test chamber. From the Voidwalker observation area, Reed said, his voice hard. Someone sent a pulse of energy into our experiment. Davis looked stunned. They sabotaged us. Reed nodded slowly. The theoretical models they gave us have subtle flaws too. I had a team double-check them against our latest findings. They set us up to fail from the beginning. But why? Miller asked. What's the point of a test no one can pass? Control, Reed said. They quarantine species who might become competitors. They never expected us to get this far. Reed stood up and faced his two remaining scientists. The world governments are backing out. The public is scared. We have 2 years left, almost no Davium, and no support. So it's over, Miller said, deflated. No, Reed answered. Now we do it our way. No more following alien guidelines. No more public tests they can sabotage. We start from scratch, with human science, human ideas. With what resources? Davis asked. Reed smiled grimly. I still have friends, people who believe in us. Tomorrow, I address the world. I'll tell them exactly what happened today and what it means. And what does it mean? Miller asked. Reed's eyes hardened. That the aliens are afraid of us. They called this task impossible because they fear what happens when humans make the impossible real. They lied to us, Reed said, standing before cameras broadcasting to every corner of Earth. His face was grim but determined. The Voidwalkers gave us flawed science. They sabotaged our work. 7 good people died not because of human error, but because the aliens fear what we might achieve. The world listened in shocked silence. For 3 years, humanity had worked together toward a single goal. Now their hero was telling them it had all been rigged from the start. I'm not asking for government funding anymore, Reed continued. I'm asking for something more valuable. Your trust, your belief, your human ingenuity. In the days that followed, Reed's speech became the most viewed recording in history. A movement started, small at first, then growing. People around the world began sending messages of support. Scientists who had been pulled from the project by their governments offered to work in secret. Engineers volunteered their free time. 4 months after the disaster, a new facility took shape in an abandoned mining complex deep beneath the mountains of Norway. Here, away from Voidwalker observation, Reed gathered his new team. Smaller than before, just 50 people, but each chosen not just for brilliance, but for their ability to think differently. We're starting over, Reed told them in their first meeting. Forget everything the aliens taught us. What do humans know about space, time, and dimensions that might be unique to our perspective? Miller, now Reed's second-in-command, displayed a new theoretical model on the main screen. Davis and I have been working on something. We've abandoned the idea of bending space or slipping between folds. Davis stepped forward. Humans have always pictured wormholes as tunnels or bridges, but what if they're more like doors? Over the next few months, they developed a new approach. Instead of trying to connect 2 points in space, they would create a single point that existed in 2 places simultaneously, a quantum doorway. The aliens see space-time as a fabric to be manipulated, Miller explained during a progress update. We're treating it as information to be rewritten. Progress was slow without government resources, but something unexpected happened. Around the world, ordinary people began contributing in ways Reed hadn't imagined. Computer programmers created a global network that used spare computing power from millions of personal devices to run complex simulations. University students organized to conduct small experiments, sharing results through encrypted channels. It's becoming a global movement, Miller told Reed one night as they reviewed the latest data. People meeting in basements and garages to solve pieces of the puzzle. The Voidwalkers can't track all of it. Reed nodded. Humanity at its best. When we face extinction, we don't surrender. We innovate. 1 year after the disaster, with just months remaining in the challenge, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A 16-year-old girl from Kenya sent a mathematical proof that resolved a critical flaw in their quantum doorway theory. She solved it, Davis said, amazed as he reviewed her work. The girl figured out how to stabilize the quantum state using principles from music theory, of all things, harmonic resonance patterns that match the universe's own rhythms. With this key insight, progress accelerated. The team built a small prototype using the last of their davium, combined with more common elements. It doesn't look impressive, Davis admitted as they gathered around a device no bigger than a microwave oven. Inside was a silver ring containing a small amount of davium, surrounded by copper coils and crystal arrays. Will it work? Reed asked. In theory, Miller said, but we can only test it once. We have enough power for a single attempt, and we're using our last davium. Reed looked at the faces of his team, exhausted, hopeful, determined. Then we make it count. The test was set for midnight. As the final preparations were made, Reed received an unexpected message. It was from Nexus. Your species continues to surprise us, the Voidwalker said, its colors shifting rapidly. Many believed you had abandoned the challenge after your failure. We don't give up easily, Reed replied. So we observe. Our monitoring shows unusual patterns of human activity worldwide. Small energy signatures, data transmissions, minor experiments with spatial distortion. Reed kept his face neutral. People are curious by nature. Indeed. Nexus paused. The deadline approaches, Captain Reed. The consequences of failure remain unchanged. After the transmission ended, Reed hurried to the testing chamber. They know something's happening. We need to move now. The team took their positions. The prototype was connected to power systems jury-rigged from industrial generators. On the other side of the room, a receiving station waited to detect any matter transmitted through the hoped-for doorway. Power levels rising, Miller reported. 50%, 70%. The davium began to glow, but differently than before. Instead of the blue-white light they had seen in previous tests, it pulsed with a rainbow of colors that seemed to bend in impossible directions. Quantum field stabilizing, Davis said, watching the instruments. The harmonic patterns are holding. 100% power, Miller announced. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in the center of the ring, a point of darkness appeared. Unlike the previous wormhole, this darkness didn't grow larger. Instead, it remained a pinpoint, but somehow felt deeper than anything they had created before. Is it working? Reed asked. Davis held up a small steel ball. Let's find out. He placed it in a tube connected to the device, then pressed a button that would push the ball toward the dark point. Everyone held their breath as the ball rolled down the tube, touched the point of darkness, and vanished. A second later, alarms blared on the receiving station. We have matter transfer, Miller shouted, checking the readings. The ball arrived intact. Molecular structure preserved. The team erupted in cheers. Reed moved to clap Davis on the shoulder, but stopped when he saw the inventor's face. What's wrong? Reed asked. It worked. Davis pointed at the instruments. The doorway didn't close. Isn't that good? Reed asked. A stable wormhole was the goal. You don't understand, Miller said, her voice filled with wonder. It's not just stable. It's permanent. According to these readings, once created, it requires no energy to maintain. It's self-sustaining. That's impossible, someone in the back of the room said. Reed smiled. Not anymore. 2 days later, with the prototype carefully transported to a secure facility, Reed sent a message to the Voidwalkers. It was time to demonstrate humanity's achievement. As representatives from the alien delegation arrived, Reed couldn't help but notice their skin colors displaying patterns he had never seen before, rapid shifts between white and deep violet. Is something wrong? He asked Nexus as they walked toward the demonstration area. The alien turned its vertical eyes toward him. We have detected unusual spatial distortions coming from this region. The Council is concerned. Reed smiled. Good. They should be. The demonstration chamber was crowded with aliens. Not just Voidwalkers, but representatives from 30 different species from across the galaxy. Word had spread about the human attempt to complete the impossible challenge, and many had come to witness what they assumed would be humanity's failure. Reed stood proudly next to the device that didn't look impressive enough to change the course of history. The quantum doorway generator was now housed in a simple metal frame, connected to a standard power supply. On the other side of the room sat a receiving station with monitoring equipment. Welcome, Reed addressed the gathered aliens. Today marks the final day of our 5-year challenge. As requested, we will demonstrate a stable wormhole capable of transporting matter between 2 points. Nexus moved forward, its skin rippling with dark blue and purple patterns. You claim success where all evidence suggested failure. The Council requires proof beyond simple matter transfer. A human must pass through the doorway. Murmurs spread through the alien crowd. Such a test was dangerous, even with proven technology. Reed nodded. I'll go through myself. Miller stepped forward. Captain. It's my responsibility, Reed said quietly. Then, louder to the aliens. Before I do, I want to explain what we've created, because it's not what you expected. He activated a holographic display showing the theoretical model developed by his team. The Voidwalkers challenged us to build a wormhole bridge using principles that required bending spacetime. We failed at that approach, partly due to sabotage, partly because humans think differently. Nexus's colors darkened, but it remained silent. Instead, we created something new, Reed continued. We call it a persistent dimensional bridge. Unlike a wormhole, which connects 2 points in space by creating a tunnel, our bridge creates a single point that exists in 2 locations simultaneously. An alien with crystalline features stepped forward. Reed recognized it as a member of a species called the Kori, known for their expertise in dimensional physics. This is theoretically impossible, the Kori said, its voice like chiming bells. Such a connection would require infinite energy to maintain. That's what we thought too, Davis said, joining Reed. But we discovered something about the nature of reality that your people have overlooked. The universe naturally wants to connect to itself. We're not forcing a connection. We are merely opening a door that wants to be opened. Reed pulled up new diagrams. We used harmonic resonance patterns based on music theory to find the natural frequencies of spacetime. Once attuned correctly, the bridge forms on its own and requires no energy to maintain. The aliens exchanged glances, their various communication methods, colors, clicks, movements, all indicating disbelief and concern. Enough theory, Nexus interrupted. Demonstrate your bridge. Reed nodded to Miller, who activated the device. The small amount of davium in the ring began to pulse with rainbow colors. In the center, a point of absolute darkness appeared, not a hole, but a spot where reality simply stopped and something else began. The bridge is stable, Miller confirmed, reading the instruments. ready for human transport. Reed took a deep breath and approached the device. He turned to face the aliens one last time. Whether I return or not, remember this: humans don't accept impossible challenges, we overcome them. With that, he stepped forward and touched the dark point. There was no sensation of movement, no feeling of passage. One moment he was in front of the assembled aliens, the next he was across the room at the receiving station. The alien delegation erupted in a cacophony of sounds and colors. The Corey's crystalline body vibrated so intensely that small fragments broke off and fell to the floor. Impossible, Nexus said, its colors pulsing rapidly between white and black. The readings showed no energy consumption to maintain the bridge. This violates fundamental laws of dimensional physics. Reed walked back to the main group, not through the bridge but around it, to prove he was physically present. Not impossible, just unknown to you until now. The Voidwalker leader approached Reed, its colors now stable in a pattern he had never seen before, deep gold with streaks of silver. The Council recognizes humanity's completion of the challenge. Your species will be welcomed into the galactic community. But Reed wasn't finished. Before we accept, I have questions. Why give us a task designed to be impossible? Why sabotage our efforts? Why bet against our success? For a long moment, Nexus was silent. Then, its colors shifted to a gentle blue. The test was not designed to be impossible. It was designed to be solved differently. What do you mean? Miller asked. Every species that joins our federation must demonstrate not just intelligence, but innovation, Nexus explained. We provide basic theories with deliberate flaws. Those who merely follow our guidance fail. Those who find their own path succeed. The Corey stepped forward. For 10,000 years, no new species has passed the test. All followed the given path, even when it led to failure. And the sabotage? Reed asked. A final test, Nexus admitted. Those who give up after setbacks are not ready for the challenges of interstellar community. Davis laughed. So this whole thing was a test to see if we think for ourselves. More than that, another alien said, this one with features that reminded Reed of an Earth octopus. Our Federation has reached a plateau. Our sciences advance slowly. Our technologies have remained largely unchanged for millennia. We need fresh perspectives. Reed looked around at the alien delegation, understanding dawning. You need us. The universe is vast and full of mysteries, Nexus said. Some that even our combined knowledge cannot solve. Your persistent dimensional bridge is something our scientists declared impossible. Yet here it stands. Miller joined Reed. So what happens now? Now, Nexus said, its colors brightening. Humans join the galactic community not just as new members, but as innovators. Your science will be studied. Your perspectives valued. Your bridge technology will revolutionize interstellar travel. 1 month later, Reed stood on the bridge of the ECS Defiant, looking out at the stars. The ship had been retrofitted with the new bridge technology, making it the first human vessel capable of instant travel to any point in known space. Miller and Davis stood beside him as a larger version of their quantum doorway generator powered up. Where to, Captain? The navigator asked. Reed smiled. The Galactic Council has invited us to establish a human innovation center at their headquarters. Let's not keep them waiting. As the Defiance bridge point activated, creating a doorway across 50 light-years of space, Reed thought about the journey that had brought them here, from impossible challenge to new reality, from isolation to becoming key members of an interstellar civilization. You know, Davis said as if reading his thoughts, we should thank the Voidwalkers. Their impossible challenge pushed us to achieve something greater than we ever would have on our own. That's humanity for you, Reed replied. Tell us something's impossible, and we'll turn it into reality every time. The starfield outside the view screen shifted as the Defiant passed through the permanent bridge, carrying humanity's representatives to their new place among the stars. Not as junior members, but as teachers of what was possible when the impossible was merely a challenge waiting to be overcome.